For 2 centuries, the world believed Sir Isaac Newton had solved the universe. Time was a steady drumbeat. Space was an unmoving stage. Reality was absolute. Then, in the silence of a Swiss patent office, an unknown 26-year-old clerk dismantled it all. With nothing more than a pen and pure imagination, Albert Einstein proved that time is an illusion, space is flexible, and mass is merely energy in disguise. He didn't just add to human knowledge, he fundamentally rewrote the operating manual of existence. However, the image history preserved, the eccentric old man with wild hair and a playful smile, masks a far more turbulent reality. Einstein was a man defined by contradictions. He was a committed pacifist whose work inadvertently paved the way for the deadliest weapon in human history. He was a global celebrity hounded by the press and public, yet a deeply solitary figure who felt like a stranger in his own family. He was a Jewish intellectual who became enemy number 1 in Nazi Germany, forced to flee the very land his genius had illuminated. To understand Einstein is to understand the terrifying burden of seeing what others cannot. His journey was not a straight line from brilliance to acclaim. It was a gauntlet of academic rejection, personal tragedy, and political persecution. He challenged the rigid authority of the Prussian education system and the scientific establishment alike, driven by a single, burning curiosity about the old one, his name for the mystery of nature. How did a man who couldn't find a teaching job end up unlocking the secrets of the stars? And what was the personal cost of possessing a mind that could see the 4th dimension? The story begins not with a burst of brilliance, but with a profound silence. Born on March 14, 1879, in Ulm, Germany, Albert Einstein entered the world causing immediate distress to his parents, Hermann and Pauline. His head was misshapen, large and angular, leading the family doctor to fear the child might be mentally disabled. Even as the physical deformity corrected itself, a deeper worry set in. The boy refused to speak. While other children babbled and mimicked, Albert remained quiet, observing the world with a detached, intense gaze. It wasn't until he was 3 years old that he began to form sentences. And even then, he developed a strange habit of whispering words to himself before speaking them aloud, testing the sound of the language on his tongue. The family maid dubbed him Der Deperte, the dopey one. But inside that quiet mind, a storm was brewing. The inciting incident of his intellectual life occurred when he was 5 years old, confined to bed with a fever. His father brought him a small pocket compass to entertain him. For most children, it would have been a momentary distraction. For Albert, it was a revelation. He turned the device in his hands, watching the needle swing relentlessly north. No matter how he twisted or shook it, an invisible hand guided the needle. He trembled with excitement. The sensation was cold and terrifying, yet deeply alluring. He realized then that something deeply hidden had to be behind things. The empty space was not empty at all. It was alive with forces the eye could not see. As he grew, the Einsteins moved to Munich, where Hermann joined forces with his brother Jakob to run an electrical engineering company. The family environment was secular and stimulating, filled with talk of Schiller, Heine, and the wonders of the newly electrified world. However, this intellectual freedom crashed violently against the walls of the Luitpold Gymnasium. School was a nightmare of Prussian regimentation. In late 19th century Germany, education was designed to produce obedient soldiers and bureaucrats, not thinkers. Teachers paced the aisles like drill sergeants, demanding rote memorization and absolute submission. Albert, who questioned everything, was visibly miserable. He despised the marching, the mechanical drilling of facts, and the suppression of curiosity. He sat in the back, often smirking at the absurdity of the authority figures, a trait that enraged his instructors. One teacher, exasperated by Albert's silent rebellion, famously told him, "Einstein, you will never amount to anything." The feeling of intellectual suffocation was palpable. He felt the school was eating his soul. To survive, he retreated inward. He found solace not in the classroom, but at the family dinner table. A poor medical student named Max Talmud began joining the Einsteins for weekly meals. Talmud recognized the spark in the quiet boy's eyes and became his first true mentor. He brought Albert books on science and philosophy, introducing him to Aaron Bernstein's People's Books on Natural Science and Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. While his classmates were memorizing Latin verbs, 12-year-old Albert was devouring geometry. He found a holy geometry book that he carried like a talisman. The logic of the proofs provided a shelter from the chaos of the world. Here, in the clean lines of triangles and circles, there was no arbitrary authority, only truth. He taught himself calculus by 14, mastering complex mathematics years ahead of his peers, purely for the joy of the mental architecture. The tension between Albert and his environment reached a breaking point in 1894. His father's business failed, forcing the family to liquidate their assets and move to Milan, Italy, in search of a fresh start. But 15-year-old Albert was left behind in Munich at a boarding house to finish his gymnasium schooling. Alone, depressed, and disgusted by the militaristic atmosphere of the school, Albert plotted his escape. He could not bear the thought of being drafted into the German military, a fate that awaited him at 16. He devised a plan that showed his early cunning. He convinced a doctor to diagnose him with neurasthenic exhaustion and persuaded his math teacher to certify that his mathematical skills were already university level. With these documents in hand, he dropped out of school, renounced his German citizenship, and fled across the Alps to join his family in Italy. The relief was instantaneous. In Italy, the air was lighter, the people more expressive, and the history rich with art and culture. For months, he wandered the museums and countryside, intoxicated by freedom. He was a high school dropout with no diploma and no citizenship. But for the first time, his mind was free to roam. Reality soon intervened. His father insisted he finish his education to become an engineer. Albert applied to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich, a prestigious institute that didn't require a high school diploma if one passed the entrance exam. He failed. While his scores in math and physics were exceptional, he bombed the French, chemistry, and biology sections. The director of the Polytechnic, impressed by the boy's math scores, advised him to spend a year at a cantonal school in Aarau, Switzerland, to fill the gaps. This detour proved to be the most critical year of his adolescence. The school in Aarau was the antithesis of the Munich gymnasium. It was based on the philosophy of Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi, which emphasized visual thinking and individual intuition. Living with the Winteler family, Albert flourished. He fell in love with the Winteler's daughter, Marie, and found a father figure in Jost Winteler. It was here, walking through the Swiss countryside, that the 16-year-old Albert conducted his first famous thought experiment. He looked at the sunlight and asked himself a question that would haunt him for 10 years. If I could chase a beam of light and catch up to it, what would I see? According to Newtonian physics, he should see a stationary wave of light, frozen in space. But Albert knew intuitively that this was impossible. Light never stood still. This paradox, the conflict between established mechanics and the behavior of light, planted the seed for special relativity. In 1896, Albert finally entered the Zurich Polytechnic. He was 17, arrogant, and undeniably brilliant. Yet the pattern of rebellion continued. He skipped the lectures of Heinrich Weber, the physics professor, because Weber refused to teach the modern theories of Maxwell's electromagnetism. Instead, Albert spent his time in cafes, reading the latest scientific papers on his own and copying the class notes of his loyal friend, Marcel Grossmann. Professor Weber, insulted by Einstein's absence and lack of deference, famously declared, "You are a smart boy, Einstein, a very smart boy. But you have one great fault. You do not let yourself be told anything." It was also at the Polytechnic that Albert met the only woman in his physics section, Mileva Maric. She was older, Serbian, dark, and intense. She shared his passion for physics and his disdain for bourgeois convention. Their relationship blossomed over textbooks and coffee, an intellectual romance fueled by a shared ambition to decode the universe. She became his sounding board, the anchor to his soaring, chaotic thoughts. By the time he graduated in 1900, Albert's arrogance had cost him dearly. While his classmates were offered assistantships, Albert was passed over. Weber and the other professors viewed him as a lazy dog. He was unemployed. His father was dying and disappointed in him, and the academic doors were slammed shut. He sent letters to professors across Europe, begging for work, even offering to lick stamps, but received only silence in return. At the turn of the century, the man who would revolutionize science was a stateless, unemployed tutor, deemed a failure by the very institutions designed to foster knowledge. He had the questions, but the world wasn't ready to listen. The turning point came in the most unlikely of places. In 1902, thanks to the influence of a friend's father, Einstein secured a job as a patent clerk, third class, in Bern. To the outside world, it was a defeat. A genius relegated to checking the technical specifications of gravel sorters and shower heads. But to Einstein, it was a sanctuary. The worldly monastery, as he called it, provided him with a steady income and, more importantly, freedom from the publish or perish pressure of academia. He would finish his work in a few hours, and then, pulling a sheaf of crumpled papers from a drawer, he would return to the problem of light. Then came 1905, the Annus Mirabilis, the miracle year. In a frantic burst of creativity that has no parallel in the history of science, the 26-year-old clerk published 4 papers in the Annalen der Physik that dismantled classical physics. He didn't just chip away at the edges, he took a sledgehammer to the foundation. First, he proved atoms existed, Brownian motion. Second, he argued that light was not just a wave, but a stream of particles, the photoelectric effect, a discovery that would eventually win him the Nobel Prize. Third, he introduced special relativity, declaring that time was not absolute. 2 people moving at different speeds would experience time differently. Finally, he added a postscript, a simple equation that revealed the terrifying power locked inside matter. E equals mc squared. Energy and mass were the same thing, just in different forms. He expected the world to gasp. Instead, the world stayed silent. The papers were published, and nothing happened. He returned to the patent office, waiting for the scientific community to catch up. Slowly, the titans of physics, including Max Planck, began to take notice. By 1909, Einstein had resigned from the patent office and began his ascent through the universities of Zurich, Prague, and finally, Berlin. But he wasn't satisfied. Special relativity had a flaw. It didn't account for gravity. For 8 years, from 1907 to 1915, Einstein waged a solitary intellectual war. He called it his happiest thought, imagining a man falling off a roof. The man would not feel his own weight. This insight led Einstein to a radical conclusion. Gravity was not a force pulling objects down, as Newton claimed. Gravity was the curvature of space and time itself. Matter told space how to curve. Space told matter how to move. The mathematical struggle to prove this nearly broke him. His marriage to Mileva was collapsing. His health was deteriorating due to stomach ulcers and exhaustion, and the world was erupting into the chaos of World War I. Alone in Berlin, living on little more than coffee and stubbornness, he raced against the mathematician David Hilbert to complete the equations. In November 1915, haggard and triumphant, he presented the general theory of relativity. He had rewritten the rules of the cosmos. A theory is just poetry until it is proven. The proof came on May 29, 1919. A total solar eclipse offered a chance to see if the sun's gravity would bend the light of distant stars, as Einstein predicted. British astronomer Arthur Eddington led an expedition to the island of Principe to photograph the event. When the results were announced at the Royal Society in London, the atmosphere was electric. The measurements confirmed Einstein was right. Newton had been dethroned. The New York Times headline screamed, "Lights all askew in the heavens. Einstein theory triumphs." Overnight, the unknown physicist became the most famous man on Earth. In the wake of a devastating war, a weary world latched onto this figure who looked beyond the politics of men to the eternal laws of the stars. He was mobbed by reporters, celebrated by kings, and hailed as a new messiah of intellect. Yet the revolutionary eventually became the resistor. As the 1920s roared on, physics took a turn toward the bizarre with the rise of quantum mechanics. Young physicists like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg described a subatomic world governed by chance and probability. Einstein, who had helped birth this field, recoiled. He could not accept a universe ruled by chaos. God does not play dice, he famously insisted. He spent the latter half of his career in a lonely, quixotic quest for a unified field theory, a single framework to bind gravity and electromagnetism. While the rest of the scientific community moved on, Einstein remained the stubborn iconoclast, searching for order in a chaotic world, proving that even a genius can find himself left behind by the very revolution he ignited. There is a pervasive myth that Einstein was a saintly, detached sage. The reality was far more abrasive. While his mind roamed the cosmos, his feet often trampled on those closest to him. His brilliance came with a terrifying emotional detachment. He could embrace humanity in the abstract, championing peace and social justice, but he often failed to embrace the actual humans in his living room. His marriage to Mileva Maric, once a partnership of 2 hearts and 1 soul, disintegrated into a Cold War. As his fame rose, her light faded. She was left to raise their 2 sons while he traveled the world, fated by aristocracy. When their relationship hit rock bottom in 1914, Einstein didn't just leave, he issued a manifesto. He wrote a brutal list of conditions for his wife if she wanted to remain in his house. She was to clean his laundry, bring his meals to his room, and stop talking to him immediately if he demanded it. He treated his marriage like a physics problem, something to be controlled, categorized, and silenced. Mileva eventually fled to Zurich with the children, leaving Einstein alone in Berlin. He cried at the station, yet days later, he admitted to a friend that living alone was like being reborn. He soon found a partner better suited to his need for solitude, his cousin, Elsa Löwenthal. Unlike the brooding, intellectual Mileva, Elsa was maternal and undemanding. She didn't challenge his theories, she managed his life. She packed his bags, cooked his meals, and guarded him from the press. She allowed him to be the genius while she played the role of the caretaker. But even this relationship was marred by his infidelities. Einstein loved women, and women loved the famous physicist. He had a string of affairs, rationalizing them with the same detached logic he applied to atoms. Monogamy, he argued, was unnatural. The tragedy of Einstein's private life was most acute with his children. His relationship with his eldest son, Hans Albert, was fractured by the divorce. But it was his younger son, Eduard, who broke his heart. Teta, as they called him, was brilliant and artistic, a sensitive soul who worshipped his father. But in his 20s, Teta descended into the darkness of schizophrenia. Einstein, the man who could explain the bending of light, was powerless against the bending of a mind. He struggled to cope with his son's illness. He visited Teta in the asylum, playing his violin to soothe the young man, but the pain was too great. When Einstein eventually fled Europe for America, he left Eduard behind in a Swiss care facility. He would never see his son again. It was a ghost that haunted him to his grave, a problem he could not solve, a variable he could not isolate. While his personal life was turbulent, his public life became dangerous. As the 1920s bled into the 1930s, the darkness of Nazism began to swallow Germany. To the rising fascist regime, Einstein was not a national hero. He was a target. They labeled his work Jewish physics, a corruption of the true Aryan science. He was harassed on the streets. His books were thrown into bonfires, the flames licking at the pages of Relativity in the Berlin public squares. A magazine even published a picture of him with the caption, "Not yet hanged." The pacifist who preached unity was now a man with a bounty on his head. In 1933, while visiting the United States, news reached him that the Nazis had raided his cottage. They had seized his bank accounts and turned his beloved sailboat into Hitler Youth property. He realized he could never go home. Einstein became the world's most famous refugee. He settled in Princeton, New Jersey, walking the quiet, leafy streets in sockless shoes, an exile in a strange land. The cruelest irony of Einstein's life arrived in 1939. Leo Szilard, a fellow physicist, came to him with terrifying news. German scientists had split the uranium atom. The Nazis were on the brink of building an atomic bomb. Einstein, who had spent his life advocating for peace, faced an impossible choice. If Hitler got the bomb first, civilization was doomed. With a heavy hand, he signed the famous letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, urging the U.S. to accelerate its nuclear research. That signature helped launch the Manhattan Project. 6 years later, when the news broke that Hiroshima had been obliterated, Einstein was devastated. He was heard groaning, "Woe is me." The equation E equals mc squared, his beautiful revelation about the unity of nature, had been turned into the angel of death. He spent his final years haunted by this, tirelessly campaigning for nuclear disarmament. Terrified that he had handed humanity a loaded gun it was too immature to handle. Conclusion. On April 18, 1955, at the age of 76, Albert Einstein's heart began to fail. He lay in a hospital bed in Princeton, muttering in German, a language the American nurse at his side could not understand. His final words were lost to history, dissipating like smoke. The next morning, photographers captured an image of his office desk. It was cluttered, chaotic, covered in papers and coffee mugs. On the blackboard behind it were scribbled equations, his final, failed attempt to find the unified field theory. He died working. He died wondering. But the world he left behind was irrevocable, changed. He had taken us from a universe of rigid certainties to one of relative perspectives. He made us realize that reality is not what we see, but what we can imagine. Einstein's legacy is not just in the GPS satellites that orbit the Earth, correcting their clocks for relativity, or in the lasers and microchips that power our digital age. It is in the very way we view genius. He became the archetype of the thinker, the wild hair, the bicycle, the violin, the refusal to wear socks. He showed us that intellect does not require conformity. He was a paradox, a loner who loved humanity, a pacifist who birthed the bomb, a scientist who spoke of God not as a deity, but as the harmony of natural laws. 3 life lessons from Albert Einstein. 1. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Einstein never considered himself the smartest mathematician. He admitted his calculation skills were inferior to others. But he had something they didn't: the courage to daydream. He visualized trains moving at light speed and elevators falling through space. He taught us that logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. 2. Question authority. From the Munich gymnasium to the halls of quantum mechanics, Einstein never accepted "because I said so" as an answer. He challenged Newton. He challenged his professors. He challenged the Nazis. His life is a testament to the power of the holy curiosity that refuses to bow to established dogma. Progress happens only when someone dares to ask, "Is this really true?" 3. Resilience in the face of failure. We remember the Nobel Prize, but we forget the years of silence. We forget the unemployed tutor, the rejected academic, the patent clerk ignored by the establishment. Einstein failed for years before he succeeded. He proved that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a necessary stepping stone. As he famously said, "It's not that I'm so smart. It's just that I stay with problems longer." In the end, Albert Einstein did more than explain the stars. He taught us to look up. He reminded a fractured world that we are all part of the same mysterious Mandarin, beautiful cosmos. And somewhere, amidst the curvature of space and time, the boy with the compass is still there, trembling at the wonder of it all.